special gentleman in a hat.
Hi.
Called Bill Tai.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
I don't even know how to introduce you. Because
I don't even know how to introduce myself.
So there are just so many things that I actually should say about you. Maybe just focusing on today. Today, Bill is a board member of Bitfury. Who know what Bitfury is? That's one of the biggest miner, a Bitcoin miner, but now moving into all the different space. Bill is also one of the probably that doesn't need explanation, right?
I'm one of the backers of CryptoKitties.
Supporters of CryptoKitties, right? That's a small thing, right?
It's a fun one.
Exactly. But to me personally, Bill is this great inspiration because back in 2015, he wrote me a very special Twitter message saying, like, Olga, this great Necker Island with Branson, with all these guys, we're going to take you on board because we need more women in the space.
We do, yes.
And that was the moment you just got me, right?
I have funded actually 9 women CEOs.
Wow.
I helped put together the Power Ledger ICO behind Gemma Green. One of the people I backed became the chief scientist of Israel, Orna Berry, years ago. Yeah, and Jerry Sinclair, she started the .NET framework. Oh, she started a little company called Encompass Labs that got acquired when the internet started. She ended up using that technology to create .NET and was Microsoft Canada's general manager. But I've had great luck. Yeah. Melanie Perkins from Canva. I'm her seed backer, if you know that one.
Great. So how folks in Silicon Valley seen you? It's quite a fact that Silicon Valley does not invest in women.
Yes.
That's why I'm not there. I'm here.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're crazy or?
I'm a little bit of an outlier. I think, I kind of go in and out of circles, and I think people respect me because I've had good success, but nobody really understands how and why, because my methods are a little bit unorthodox. I don't know.
That's true. Even if I look at this.
Yes. I'm going to take some pictures. Yeah, this is a 360 camera. Like I say, have you guys seen these things? Actually, I was going to do that. Or we're going to sit down and do questions too at the end.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So because I'll run through some slides real quick.
Okay. So there's a lot of things that I'm absolutely excited about. Bill, is that he is one of the really cool kite surfers and windsurfers, and actually creator of my Thai.
It's called Actai Global. We changed. There'll be a slide on it.
It's a different name, right?
Yes.
And we're gonna join you guys on Necker Island.
Yes. I thought I'd just give like a little bit of background because you'll see it a little bit later, but I ended up starting mining Bitcoin in 2009, and people wonder why. How did that happen? And this is like a little bit of a touch, but I started as a semiconductor chip designer, and this is a shot of me in my 20s. But I went to University of Illinois in the middle of the cornfields in the middle of the United States, where there's not much there. It just does so happen that Illinois, one of the faculty members was one of the 3 co-inventors of the transistor. So John Bardeen went to Illinois, Shockley went to Stanford, and Brattain went to Bell Labs. So somehow in the middle of this cornfield, there's like a lot of activity, and the Mozilla, the browser for Netscape came out of there. The engineering teams of YouTube and PayPal, the VP of engineering at Google for a long time was from there, because there was a really deep computer science program there. But that's not the point of it. I was a kid at Illinois, kind of hacking, and when I was, I had this little Radio Shack. Do you guys have Radio Shack here? Okay, so there's like these electronic stores in the United States, like a big chain, and they sell all these things, and they have this little kit called the 100-in-1 Electronic Projects Kit. And it has like resistors and capacitors and parts on a piece of cardboard with springs, and you basically have a book, and you wire like spring number 7 goes to spring number 15, and you make stuff. And somehow, when I was in junior high, I found a diagram that was of a product that Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs designed. They had a company that no one knows about before Apple Computer, and they were basically selling these little things called blue boxes. And anyway, you guys should look that up. There's a great article called, I think, Secrets of the Little Blue Box. But I guess maybe, I don't know how much time we have, but what that thing did, in the US phone system, there's basically a hierarchical computer system. And to communicate computer to computer, they use touch tones, just like, you remember when you dial touch tones, DTMF. And if you play a certain frequency into a phone, it unlocks the computer system. And so it was illegal because you could make free phone calls and all that stuff. And that was Jobs and Wozniak's first company. And somehow I got intrigued with this and I started making the little blue boxes. And that turned me into an electrical engineer, and I went to University of Illinois. And when I got out, I had very good grades, but I had offers to go to school for grad school at Harvard and Stanford, and job offers from IBM, Motorola, and Hewlett-Packard, and I turned them all down to get in my little Dodge Colt, drive for 4 days across the country because I wanted to come to this. So I moved to Silicon Valley in 1984. Sunnyvale at the time was a cherry orchard. In the back of my apartment, there's a fence, and I could climb over the fence and get cherries. Anyway, so this was the Homebrew Computer Club, and you may not recognize these pictures, but that's Bill Gates and Paul Allen, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak. Alan Shugart used to come to those, the guys that started Sun Microsystems. So like this is a gathering of people just interested in the same subject. You had people from every religion, so to speak, coming to this one thing to share information. And that was just something I wanted to be part of. So I moved to Silicon Valley and I started going to those things. And anyway, so that's how I ended up there. Somehow I rode the right waves. So because I was a silicon designer, it was all about silicon in the 80s. And I kind of went from silicon to routers and switches and hubs. I became a venture capitalist. I started an ISP in 1994 and ended up setting up data centers in about 10 countries in Asia. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley took that public in year 2000. I retired 18 years ago. I became a kite surfer. I got sponsored as an athlete, and that's kind of what I did. Anyway, but I kept investing in stuff. And now what I do mostly is I have this nonprofit, and it stands for Athletes, Conservationists, Technologists, Artists, and Innovators. And we have these 3 vows. You can't read them because it's too dark, but stand for something greater than yourself, number 1. 2 is leave every person or place you touch better off than before you touched it. And then the last one is use the powers the universe has granted you to empower others. And so I've got a tribe of people that numbers thousands around the world that somehow got together through sports and technology, and we try to use technology to improve things. And that led to what Olga referred to. So among the things that I put together 4 years ago, I started the Blockchain Summit for Social Good on Richard Branson's island with him in attendance. And that's now in our 4th year. We pioneered a lot of concepts around things like, putting land titles and identity for refugees on the blockchain, and just like a bunch of stuff has come out of that. That I could spend hours talking about that. Anyway, so how did I get into blockchain? This is another weird story. So also in 2000, or 99 actually. Okay, so this is a picture of Las Vegas. What is Las Vegas, right? It's just like a pile of sand. There's nothing there. A friend of mine is Philip Rosedale, who was he was at the time the CTO of Real Networks. He quit his job and he came to me and he said, "Hey Bill, I want to start another company." And I said, "Well, what are you going to do, Philip? I want to back you. What are you going to do?" And he said, "I'm going to build Snow Crash in real life." And I don't know if you've ever read the science fiction novel Snow Crash, but it's by an author named Neil Stephenson. It was also written in the 80s, very prescient. It was basically about a virtual world. And you had an avatar representing yourself, and the avatar and yourself became so intertwined that in the end of the novel, somebody gets killed in the virtual world with a ninja sword, and the person outside dies. But anyway, so Philip, I was like, "Philip, man, that's going to be hard." But he started Second Life. Okay, so Second Life. So if you think, how does a piece of sand in a desert become this? And this is what all we're going to talk about with this virtual currency. Okay, so you literally have nothing. Like imagine Las Vegas in the 50s, sand with a highway. No jobs, no resources, no factories, there's nothing there. But now you have this. Okay, so Philip built Second Life, an unstructured environment where people would create sort of an avatar representing themselves. And he had a bunch of people, a small number of people kind of milling about in this virtual world with nothing to do. And I think around 2000, right, 2001 or 2002, I said, hey, Philip, you know, you got all these people just wandering around. We need to give them something to do. I said, why don't we create a currency? And so in Second Life, I took the name Alan Greenspan Gollum, and we created a currency. And I said, Philip, you know, this is a picture of a poker table. I said, if you got everybody in Second Life to sit in a circle and you created one poker chip or one Linden dollar, Second Life was formed on Linden Avenue in San Francisco, and you got everybody to pass that poker chip to the right 1 million times a year. Everybody would have $1 million a year of income, and while the chip's moving around, you could take a chunk off and build a resort, you could build a casino, you could build a hotel, and pretty soon you'd have that city. And so, blam. So that was the origin of the currency in that world at that time. So 6 years later, the economy took off and people were making millions of dollars of Linden equivalent, and exchanges had popped up, just like today. Exchanges had popped up in 2003 and 2004, and then Second Life built their own called the Lindex. And people could because people were taking the Linden dollars and selling them on eBay, or going, like in EverQuest, selling swords or weapons and selling them on eBay. And these little exchanges, and Mt. Gox, if you remember Mt. Gox actually started as a place that people would meet online to sell virtual goods for money for a game called Magic the Gathering online. And if you shorten the letters, that's where Mt. Gox came from, because it was just a place people would trade these virtual goods, and when Bitcoin came out, it was a natural fit. Anyway, so this economy's exploding, and because I was Alan Greenspan Gollum, people were sending me the Bitcoin white paper. It took me a long time to read it. I finally read it. I started mining in 2009, and I was like, whoa, this is profound. This is going to be interesting. And I started to look for other people that were interested, and I was corresponding with Philip. I was like, you need to study Bitcoin.org. This could be the breakaway thing. And I started tweeting. So this is from Thanksgiving weekend 2010. So 8 years ago, like nobody would talk to me. No one knew what it was. So I took to Twitter, and I felt like I was signing up for a dating site. And I was like, anyone, Bitcoin, please answer me. You know, and nobody responded for a while. Anyway, so there starts my journey into Bitcoin land. And over time, I started to meet other people, just like in the days of the Homebrew Computer Club. People found each other online. And I started to buy Bitcoin from somebody in Finland. And this kid who had dropped out of high school had half of his apartment full of machines, and he was really good, really smart. His name's Nico Poonen, by the way. Maybe you've met him. So Nico ended up with some other people becoming sort of like the expert group in how to make this stuff all work. And over time, that group formed Bitfury. And so when they got to the point from moving from laptops to graphics cards to FPGAs and needed to design a silicon chip, here I was, you know. So I wrote a check and funded the silicon, and that became. This was my early miner. That's my electricity bill at home when I really started like turning on the machines, and these are like Raspberry Pi things. These are some pieces of gear from a little bit later, and then that became this. So if you haven't seen a Bitcoin mining data center, this is one of our facilities. So Bitfury has emerged out of that, and we've mined over 1 million Bitcoins over the years, and we have electrical grids in Canada. We had one in Finland, Norway, Iceland, Republic of Georgia, Azerbaijan. We're setting up stuff in the UAE and 4 or 5 other places. I'm chairman of the board of the largest publicly listed crypto mining operation in Canada called Hut8. That one we literally just started in November, but we're already running like $11 million a quarter of revenue. And so this is a Bitcoin mining operation. So what you see, so those are, no, that's pretty cold. It's Iceland. So yeah, so this is in Iceland. It's pretty cool all year. There's a couple of my kite surfing friends. We went to go kite on, the freezing cold waters of Iceland, dropped in the data center. And that's one of 3 buildings that we have in Iceland. That one runs about 10 million watts. What you see here is like an 8 servers that are 3 or 4 U tall. Each server has, I think it's 24 cards. Each card has 48 chips, and each chip is the hash equivalent of 8,164 personal computers. And then we've got 3 of those buildings in there, and then like 20 things like that around the world. And anyway, so that's a still shot of the one that you were looking at. See, these are some of my other projects. So, Chairman of Hut8, I helped launch the AirSwap ICO, if you guys know that one. Power Ledger is a peer-to-peer power company, and then I'm a venture backer of CryptoKitties. I've got 4 or 5 other little projects too that are cooking along. So let's change gears a little bit. Okay, so why is all this stuff happening, and what is it? Like Second Life and the creation of currency, and this is a book I'd recommend you read. It's called The Ascent of Money. And it's by a monetary economist named Neil Ferguson. And this book came out, I think, right at the tail end of the great financial crisis, but he chronicled value exchange in different cultures across human civilization, from pebbles and shells and feathers and the stones of Yap to credit default swaps. All of those are basically things that represent value that can be traded just like any of these tokens. And I think he would also say that I got him into cryptocurrency and got him up to speed, because I went to go see him and just to have a lot of conversations about what is going on. And as you read a perspective on financial history, there's so many examples of eras where there's a multi-currency environment, like truly very multi-currency environment. And we live in this world, mostly from an American perspective, maybe not so much here, but that there's like one currency, and like it's the backbone of everything. And that's actually an anomaly in history. It's a very, very big anomaly. And I'll get into that too. So a little bit of short, near-term history. So at the end of World War II, if you think about the environment there, America entered late. Europe had been at war from World War I through World War II is kind of an extension of World War I in a way. But for 20, 30, 40 years, and essentially all of the productive assets of the world were destroyed. Pretty much most of them, except for a few little spots. And so to restart the economy, the Americans basically called Bretton Woods. And they got all their friends, the Western powers, to meet in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to declare a new monetary system. And to give people confidence, they wanted to give people the feeling that what they had was real. And so it was declared that there would be $35 per ounce of gold. And all other currencies would be referenced off of that. So a certain number of lira per dollar, 35 of those to gold. Francs, X number of francs a dollar, 35 of those to gold. And then, just like in Second Life, they threw that money out there and said, gentlemen, start your engines. And these economies happen. Okay, so it's happening again. Okay, and so that is an anomaly, because if you think about the era, say like I'll pick one era of American history, like before America formed, there were colonies. So all the big European powers came to the shores and they picked their spot. So there's, like New York and Virginia and, different areas controlled by the British and the French or whatever, and all these states set up that eventually formed the basis for what became the United States. But imagine being on one of those boats you sail across the ocean, you bring your friends, you step off the boat, and you draw maybe you take a piece of string if it's long enough around the forest, and you say, okay, this is now Connecticut. What are you going to do? Start a currency. So every single one of those colonies did an ICO, right? Think about it. Like every single one of them had their own currency. All the way through the unification to the dollar by Thomas Jefferson and into the 1800s, there was a time when there were 200 currencies circulating in the United States at the same time. And the dollar dominance is kind of an interesting thing because I think what happened, this is like one person's opinion, but you know, of course the gold standard broke eventually in 1972. The economic productivity was such that countries could have a trade surplus and store a bunch of dollars. So France, for example, had a bunch of dollar bills in a vault, and they literally packed them up, trucked them over, brought them to the Federal Reserve window and said, oh, this is convertible, I want my gold. And so President Nixon at the time looked at that and said, whoa, they are a pretty big chunk of the gold, and they're only one country. If everybody does the same thing, we actually don't have any. We have like a hole. And so the gold was taken off of the standard, and it allowed the float, and it went crazy. And I think what happened then was we had basically shifted already to a new type of economy where a nation's productive future was not about how much gold you had in the vault, but it was about how much oil you could get, right? So, petrodollar, petroleum. So the world basically, the economic productivity was not based on gold. It was based on industrial machinery that needed oil to make it run. So all of a sudden, the term petrodollar, which everybody's heard, you could almost look at that as a token sale, using the dollar as a proxy for barrels of oil, and nations able to store their wealth not in vaults with gold, but by hoarding dollars, because you could then buy oil and preserve your economy, right? So and these things always lag, just like there was a big gap up because it should have shifted before and it didn't until 1972. Okay, so I've said this in a couple of places, but if you had a choice today to either have Olga cut off your electricity or cut off your oil tomorrow, you know what you'd choose, right? So all of your productivity today in this room, not everybody in the world, but for the people in this world, all of our economic productivity is based on electrons, no longer oil. Like oil's sort of an underlying foundation, just like gold was to the oil economy. So I think what's happening is we've already shifted, like that period between 1944 and 72, to an electron-based economy. But it's not recognized yet universally. And so I think all these ICOs are basically, just like there's tokenized barrels of oil, there are tokenized functions of electrons that do certain things. It's a precursor for the storage of functionality that does something productive for you. And I think now we're kind of going back to what we were forever in terms of a multi-currency environment, but in a distributed way. So if you think about the concept of a nation, for all of human history, I don't know if it's hundreds of thousands or millions of years, if you want to call it like kind of subspecies primates, but people were tribal, feudal. Work was based on inspiration. So if you were, a caveman, you might like pick 5 friends to go pick berries with for a few hours, and then 10 others to go hunt with, and your job would kind of change through the day, right? And you did what you wanted to do when you wanted to do it because it mattered to you then. And then once the economic productivity model shifted because of the Industrial Revolution in oil to one where scale economies mattered, and you could basically have an assembly line and kind of dehumanize people into single function things, you had a change in economic output and a change in structure as a result. So humans went from sort of tribal feudal fluid to locked up in cages, but only for about 150 years out of millions. 99.9996% of human history, we've not been in the structures we've been in, and what we're seeing now is it's breaking down, right? So the last 2 generations, maybe 1.5 generations of your parents, they all worked like that, but the thousands before that never did. And then now think of all your young friends. None of them work like that anymore, locked up in cages for one company. Everybody works on 10 things, because now we're in this giant distributed fabric where every person's like a molecule on this fabric, can abstract themselves off the page and find communities of interest wherever they are, and multiple communities of interest when they want to work on what they want to work on. So I think the fundamental properties of our economy, productivity, and therefore currencies, and the way we work and live, it's shifting right now. So we're going through a profound fundamental change. Anyway, so that's kind of it. Okay. All right, so now I will get my camera. It's going to take a while to turn this on.
Thank you so much, Bill. It's really very impressive, Like, I think, we all know those facts and figures, most of us, but to connect them and to see what is the underlying logic and the historical shift, this is what, made for myself the speech so impressive. So thank you very much. And, before we go over to booze and wine and food, I would like to maybe just take a couple of minutes, 5 to 10
questions.
minutes for questions, right? And